In the cold, bleak hours before dawn tore through the dark night sky, you took your last breath in my arms. I held your lifeless body, feeling your warmth slip away, until all that remained was cold, empty flesh. When evening fell again, I gently washed your body, moving slowly, just as I had when we were together. And when night fully descended, I carried your empty form outside and burned it. The funeral pyre was makeshift, nothing more than discarded crates and old newspapers. As an afterthought, I tossed a few spent batteries into the fire, hoping their sparks might bring some vitality to this simple cremation. But I needn't have bothered. I hadn't anticipated how your body would react to the flames, how the muscles would twitch in the heat, expelling the last of your moisture in clouds of smoke and steam. It almost felt like watching you dance for the last time. The crackling of the fire and the popping of the batteries attracted a small group of onlookers, who silently watched until all that remained were embers and ash. I found an old tin in the trash and gathered what remained of you, your bones now cold enough to touch. Sitting quietly on the steps of our building, I pondered what kind of memorial to create. But in the end, I was left with nothing but charred remains, no trace of you left in them. I abandoned them, leaving the bones in a pile of discarded food. Returning to the dull, gray room we shared during your last months, I realized how little we had. I had never noticed before, but now there was nothing left to remind me of you except a box of clothes and a mattress stained by your illness. The numbness I'd felt all day gave way to a wave of sorrow, and I found myself crying. You had been my entire life, and now that you were gone, I felt lost. Without you, nothing made sense. I felt as if I had passed with you, my mind consumed by thoughts of you, leaving no room for me. Without thinking, I discarded my old clothes, leaving them in a heap. Using the same cold water I had used to wash your body, I bathed, trying to feel some connection to you. Shivering, I dried myself and stood unclothed before the mirror that had once been yours. Not the most fitting canvas, but it would do. I selected the clothes you had loved, a red bustier with subtle glitter, a loose red and yellow patterned skirt, and your black leather boots. They didn't fit well, the skirt was tight, and the boots pinched, but that didn't matter. Comfort wasn't the point. If anyone had asked me why, I wouldn't have been able to explain, but I knew. Clumsily, without your grace, I applied some makeup, uneven lipstick, heavy eyeshadow, and too much perfume. The perfume was the most important part, as its scent would bind you to me with every breath. I added some jewelry and tried to style my hair. My reflection seemed absurd, but I didn't care. I turned and left, the streetlights casting faint glows on the near-empty night. I walked as if I knew where I was going, and perhaps I did. There were some final actions needed to make your death not just an end, but a resolution. On the way, I stole a can of red spray paint from a convenience store and sprayed your name on the walls as I went, the letters rising as high as I could reach. A group of teenagers laughed, shouting threats at my back, but I felt distant, as though underwater. It didn't take long to reach the office building. It looked even colder and more impersonal at night. I remembered the last time I held you as you cried, the long struggle to tell me how they had refused to carry you, how it was in everyone's best interests to let you go. I found the bottle in a trash can and siphoned petrol from a car that looked expensive. I used one of your tampons as a wick, thinking you might have liked that. I lit it, shouting your name as I hurled it through the window. I didn't look back as the flames spread, engulfing the building. I heard windows shatter behind me. I lifted my hands to my face, inhaling the mix of petrol and your perfume, the scent filling my lungs. The next hours were a blur. I visited the doctor we could never afford, the insurance company that had refused to cover your treatment, and the church whose pastor had called your illness a punishment. At each stop, I painted your name. My face felt sunburned. I was exhausted. Finally, I sat on the steps of a rundown restaurant, my mind empty of thoughts. I felt I had done all I could for you, that there was nothing left to do in your memory. But you wouldn't let me rest. I closed my eyes and tried to find the missing piece, then I realized my mistake. It wasn't just about retribution, it was also about a final celebration of life. Before I met you, I had never truly understood the essence of dance. But when you took me underground that first time and danced with me, everything changed. What I had always seen as simple movement to rhythm transformed in that moment. For you, it wasn't just motion, it was the pure expression of the passion that made you who you were. You shimmered with the fire that gave you life. The club, Subterranea, had always been your favorite. I never quite understood why. The interior was meant to resemble caverns and grottos, but it was cheaply done, with papier-mâché stalagmites and stalactites, now battered and reduced to stumps by both vandals and reckless dancers. I had tried to convince you to visit other clubs, always telling you how uncomfortable I felt among the rough crowd that Subterranea attracted, but you always dismissed my concerns. That night, as we walked in, I could feel the hostile stares of everyone who noticed me. Even in the dim lighting, it would have been hard for anyone not to see me for what I was. I had a few drinks, quickly knocking them back. I considered ordering the sweet white wine you favored, but my body craved whiskey instead. The bartender never looked me in the eye. Once I felt the alcohol start to loosen my inhibitions, I headed to the dance floor. The music hit me, a blur of bass and synthetic beats. The lights spun around so rapidly that they erased any details, leaving everything in a surreal blur. I found a space and began to move. At first, I was clumsy. When I danced with you, I always felt like an awkward relative at a wedding, forced into the rhythm of music I didn't understand, embarrassed and awkward. Now, I tried to let go of my thoughts, allowing the rhythm and my body to speak for me. I stopped thinking about my limbs, the beat, it all blurred together. I felt as if I could hear you singing in my mind. My body grew slick with sweat, and a simple, joyful peace washed over me, a peace filled with energy. I closed my eyes, letting the strobe lights paint geometric patterns across my eyelids. The first blow caught me off guard. I lost my balance and fell hard into another dancer. I looked up and saw 3 young men, their uniforms severe, almost military. None of them looked old enough to be there. One, the apparent leader, shouted something I couldn't make out, his face contorting with rage. He swung his leg back and kicked me in the face. I was still dazed, unable to protect myself. His friends immediately followed suit. The strange thing was, I didn't feel much pain. I could feel their hits landing, but it all seemed distant and unimportant. My consciousness was slipping away. I was vaguely aware of being dragged across the club, my head bumping painfully against each step as they pulled me up the stairs and out the back door. The cold night air helped bring me back. I could see there were now more of them. The boy who had started it all grabbed me by one arm and threw me against a brick wall. He and his friends yelled at me, their threats filling the air as they closed in. I scanned for a way out, but there were too many of them, and my legs were too weak to run. A fire flickered in the center of the alley, a beacon of warmth for the homeless. It reminded me of your funeral pyre. I focused on it as the next round of blows hit me. The fire became my anchor, keeping me conscious as the pain rained down. It drowned out the sound of breaking bones and grinding teeth. This time, I stayed aware, my thoughts consumed by your fire. When they finally stopped, exhausted from their cruel sport, one of the men pulled out a knife, but the ringleader waved him off. He nodded toward the fire, and I felt rough hands lifting me, bone grinding against broken bone. The heat from the flames intensified as they dragged me closer. And then, they threw me in. I felt the flames devour me. The morning light roused me. Dew had mixed with the ash of the fire, leaving a gray film that covered my body. I rolled away from the remnants of the fire, the dead embers crunching beneath me. I glanced at my arms, under the ash, they appeared unscathed, the skin beneath soft and healthy. The brightness of the light made my eyes ache, and I felt strange, lightheaded, disoriented. I took a few steps, bracing for the pain of broken bones, but it never came. I began walking toward home, though without you waiting for me there, it seemed pointless. Passers-by gave me curious glances, but there was no sign of the hostility from the night before. I wondered if the ash-covered appearance made me beyond reproach or if people in the daylight were simply more accepting than those of the night. I arrived home, feeling drained and hollow. I knew sleep would elude me, but all I could do was climb into bed. I removed the tattered remains of your boots, relieved that the pain they had caused was gone. Then I started undressing. Part of me had expected this moment, but I still couldn't fully grasp what I saw. As I took off the bustier, it revealed a pair of small breasts, freed from their confines. Your breasts. The shock and fear that should have followed never came. It felt too natural, too right. I gazed at your reflection in the mirror, wiping away the ash and grime with my hand so I could see your face more clearly. I whispered your name, asking if you were still there, but you never answered. I washed myself again in the same water, cleaning off the dirt, struggling to comprehend the miracle before me. There you were, alive again in the reflection, back in our room. I embraced you, or rather, embraced myself, both of us entwined in that moment. I cried, and the tears felt like a rebirth. Eventually, I tried putting on my own clothes again, wondering if the spell or delusion would break when I returned to myself. But it made no difference. My clothes no longer fit me. Now I sit here, not entirely alone, waiting for more of you to return to me. You were the strong one, the one that mattered. If I'm honest with myself, I'm little more than the shell you left behind, reanimated but empty. All I can do now is wait in the stillness of our room, hoping for you to fill me again with your fire. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.